"Number, we didn't order for your son," my sister said, handing him a breadbasket while her kids ate $200, steaks, and dessert. I was so excited about my promotion that I made sure Tyler and I arrived at the Silver Oak perfectly on time. My 10-year-old son looked adorable in his pressed, button-down shirt as we approached the table where my sister Amanda and her perfect family were already seated alongside my father. The hostess guided us to their table near the window with its crisp white tablecloth and gleaming silverware, but my smile froze when the food arrived moments later. Amanda slid only a breadbasket toward Tyler while her 3 kids dug into sizzling steaks. "We didn't order for your son," she said coolly. When I questioned this, my father added sharply, "You should have packed him something." I just smiled and said noted. When the waiter came back to check on us, I stood up and announced, "I'd like to order the filet mignon for my son, please. Medium, with the garlic mashed potatoes." I kept my voice steady, despite the anger bubbling inside me. My father cleared his throat. "Rochelle, sit down." His authoritative tone, the same one he'd used throughout my childhood, carried the expectation of immediate compliance. I remained standing. "Tyler needs dinner." "Actually," my father said, exchanging a pointed look with Amanda, "we had a family discussion before you arrived. We've decided it's time you learn about financial responsibility." Amanda nodded, her diamond earrings catching the light. "This is a $200 per plate restaurant, Rochelle. If you want Tyler to eat here, you should pay for it yourself." I looked around the table. At my sister's 3 children already cutting into their expensive steaks, at the wine in crystal glasses, at the lobster appetizers half eaten on small plates. This dinner was supposed to be celebrating my promotion. "And we are," my father said. "We ordered you the salmon." I glanced at Tyler, his eyes downcast, small hands folded in his lap next to the breadbasket. He was trying so hard to be brave, to not cause trouble. My sweet boy had already lost his father. Now he was being deliberately excluded at what should have been a happy family gathering. "I can afford to buy my son dinner," I said, though the truth was that even with my promotion, a $200 meal would strain my carefully balanced budget. The waiter shifted uncomfortably beside me. "Ma'am, would you like to order?" Before I could respond, Amanda waved her manicured hand dismissively. "We pre-ordered for the table. If she wants something additional, she'll need to provide her own payment method." My father nodded in agreement. "Rochelle, this is exactly what we're talking about. You need to plan ahead. You should have eaten before coming or brought something for him if you couldn't afford this place." I felt heat rising in my cheeks. "You invited us to celebrate my promotion. Why would I assume my son wouldn't be fed?" "Because you're a single mother who should be more practical," Amanda said, cutting a small piece of steak for her youngest daughter. "We're trying to help you develop better habits." I slowly sank back into my chair, feeling Tyler's small hand slip into mine under the table. He squeezed my fingers gently, my 10-year-old trying to comfort me, when it should have been the other way around. "You know," my father said, leaning forward, "this promotion you're so proud of wouldn't have happened without my call to George in the executive office." I froze. "What? Did you really think they would promote someone in your situation without a little nudge?" "I mentioned you were having some financial difficulties since John's death. George owed me a favor." The pride I'd felt for the past week, the sense of finally moving forward, of earning recognition from my hard work, crumbled away. I'd spent countless late nights working on the Henderson campaign, rearranging my schedule to be there for Tyler while still delivering exceptional work. "I thought I'd earned this promotion." "I didn't ask you to do that," I said quietly. "You never ask," Amanda said. "That's the problem. You act so independent, but you've always relied on family connections. At least be honest about it." The waiter, clearly uncomfortable, mumbled something about checking on our drinks and retreated. I looked at Tyler again, his small face trying to mask his hunger as he watched his cousins eat. This was supposed to be a celebration, and instead it had become another lesson in how conditional my family's support had always been. "The bread is free," Amanda said, pushing the basket closer to Tyler. "He can have as much as he wants." I felt something shift inside me then, a quiet determination taking root. If they thought this power play would make me grovel or admit defeat, they didn't know what 2 years of widowhood and single motherhood had forged in me. "Tyler," I said, reaching for a piece of bread myself, "would you like butter with that? I'm going to have some too." My son looked up, a flicker of confusion in his eyes before understanding dawned. He nodded and reached for the bread basket. "Yes, please. Can I have 2 pieces?" "Take as many as you want," I said, loudly enough for everyone to hear. "We'll have a proper dinner after this." Celebration. Amanda's perfect eyebrows drew together in irritation. This wasn't the reaction she'd expected. My father stared at me, surprise and disapproval battling on his face. I just smiled and broke a piece of bread in half, suddenly aware that this dinner represented everything wrong with my relationship with my family, and that something needed to change. 2 hours later, I tucked Tyler into bed, his stomach finally full from the drive-thru burgers we'd grabbed after that disastrous dinner. "Mom," he said as I smoothed his blanket, "why doesn't Aunt Amanda like us?" The innocent question broke my heart. I sat on the edge of his bed, choosing my words carefully. "It's not that she doesn't like us, honey. Some people just have different ideas about what's important. Like money?" His perception sometimes startled me. Sometimes. I brushed his hair back from his forehead, so much like his father's. "But that doesn't mean they're right." After he fell asleep, I sat in our small living room, replaying the evening's events. The apartment wasn't much, 2 bedrooms in a decent neighborhood with good schools, but it was clean and safe. We'd downsized after John died, his teacher's life insurance barely covering the funeral and medical bills. My thoughts drifted to when I'd first told my family about John. I was 24, still finishing my marketing degree. A teacher, my father had said, not bothering to hide his disappointment. "Rochelle, you could do so much better." Amanda, already married to investment banker James and living in their first mansion, had smiled condescendingly. "At least he's stable, Daddy. It's not like she's bringing home a starving artist." They never saw what I saw in John, his brilliant mind, his passion for helping struggling students, the way his entire face lit up when talking about literature. They measured success in square footage and investment portfolios. John measured it in the moments when a student finally understood Shakespeare or found their voice through poetry. During the 7 years we were married, every family gathering became an exercise in subtle digs and backhanded compliments. "Oh, you're renting? Well, it's smart to live within your means." "Teaching summer school? James never has to work summers." "But I suppose the extra income helps." John weathered it with grace, never letting their comments dim his enthusiasm. "They just don't understand that we're rich in all the ways that matter," he'd say, pulling me close. When he died, a sudden heart attack at 33 that no one saw coming, my family's support came wrapped in criticism. My father helped with the funeral costs, but used the opportunity to lecture me about how John should have had better life insurance. Amanda offered to let us stay with them until you figure things out, but made it clear that her immaculate home wasn't child-friendly. I declined and found our apartment instead. I picked up extra freelance work. I learned to be both mother and father to Tyler. And somehow, we not only survived but found moments of joy amid our grief. The promotion at Westfield Marketing had felt like a turning point. Finally, something going right. I'd been handling smaller accounts for years, but landing the Henderson campaign and executing it successfully had caught the attention of senior management. Or so I thought, until my father's revelation tonight. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "Hope Tyler enjoyed his breadbasket lesson. Next time you'll be prepared. We're still meeting at Dad's on Sunday for brunch, right?" No apology. No recognition of how they'd humiliated a 10-year-old boy who'd lost his father. Just the expectation that we would continue as if nothing had happened. Before I could respond, another text came through. "By the way, Jessica mentioned that Tyler's shoes looked worn out at dinner. If you're struggling to afford basics, you should say something instead of letting him look neglected." I stared at the phone, anger building. Jessica was Amanda's 14-year-old daughter, already being molded in her mother's image. Tyler's shoes were new, a back-to-school purchase just last month. They were simply ordinary sneakers, not the designer brands Jessica wore. The cruel judgment wasn't new, but tonight had crossed a line. They'd targeted Tyler directly, using food, a basic necessity, to make their point. My finger hovered over the phone. I could respond with anger. I could cut them off entirely. I could continue the cycle of tense gatherings and forced politeness for Tyler's sake. None of those options felt right. A memory surfaced. John in the hospital during those final days, holding my hand with what little strength he had left. "Promise me something," he'd said. "Don't let them break his spirit. Or yours. And PP. And John. And a memory surfaced. I hadn't fully understood what he meant then. I did now. I was about to turn off my phone when it rang, an unfamiliar number. Thinking it might be work-related, I answered. "Rochelle? This is Diane Morris from Westfield." My breath caught. Diane was the new chief marketing officer, brought in from a major agency in New York. We'd only met briefly during my final interview for the promotion. "I hope I'm not calling too late," she continued. "I wanted to personally congratulate you on the promotion. The way you handled the Henderson campaign showed exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need." "Thank you," I said, trying to reconcile this call with my father's claim about securing my promotion. "I'm actually calling because we're reorganizing some teams, and I'd like you to consider heading up our new nonprofit division. It would mean working directly with me. The Henderson campaign showed you understand how to market with authenticity and purpose." As she continued outlining the opportunity, I realized something didn't add up. If my father had secured my promotion as a favor, why would Diane be calling me personally, offering an even more significant position? "This sounds amazing," I said when she finished. "I'm definitely interested." "Wonderful. There is one more thing. The position involves some client dinners. I was at the Silver Oak tonight with my family and noticed you there. It seemed tense." My stomach dropped. "You saw that?" "Enough to be concerned. Rochelle, we value work-life balance and family support at Westfield. If there are challenges I should be aware of." I took a deep breath. "My family dynamics are complicated, but I assure you they won't affect my work." "I'm not worried about that," she said, her voice softening. "I'm asking if you need support. Single parenting while building a career isn't easy. I've been there." The unexpected understanding brought tears to my eyes. "Thank you, we're managing." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet apartment, turning this new information over in my mind. If Diane had been watching, she'd seen my family exclude Tyler from the meal. She'd witnessed my humiliation, and possibly my restraint. And instead of judging me as deficient or problematic, she'd reached out with an opportunity and understanding. My phone buzzed again with another text from Amanda. "Seriously, Rochelle, are you coming to brunch Sunday or not? Dad's expecting an answer." I set the phone down without responding. For the first time in years, I felt something shift, a clarity about what needed to change, and the strength to make it happen. Sunday brunch arrived with a knot in my stomach. After Tyler's experience at the Silver Oak, I'd considered skipping the family gathering entirely. But something Diane had said during our follow-up meeting had stuck with me. Sometimes maintaining your place at the table is more powerful than walking away from it. So here we were, climbing the steps to my father's sprawling colonial home in Oakwood Heights, the neighborhood where I'd grown up. Tyler walked slightly behind me, his reluctance evident in his dragging feet. "We won't stay long," I promised him. "Just enough to have some food and talk to Grandpa about something important." He nodded, but his usual enthusiasm for visiting his grandfather's house, with its large backyard and game room, was noticeably absent. Amanda's Mercedes and her husband James's Range Rover were already parked in the circular driveway. I pulled my modest sedan in beside them, acutely aware of the contrast. My father opened the door before we could ring the bell. "There you are. Everyone's already eating." His greeting lacked warmth, carrying instead a subtle rebuke for our tardiness, despite us arriving exactly at the agreed time of 11. The dining room was a showcase of wealth, crystal chandelier, mahogany table, and silver serving dishes filled with catered breakfast foods. Amanda, James, and their 3 children were already seated, plates full. Finally, Amanda said, not looking up from her phone. Dad was about to say grace without you. I guided Tyler to an empty chair between his cousins. 12-year-old Matthew and 8-year-old Emma. Jessica, the oldest at 14, barely glanced up from her own phone across the table. My father took his place at the head, with Amanda and James on his right, leaving me to sit at the far end opposite him. Glad you could make time for family, my father said pointedly as we. Saturday, there was a particular emphasis on family that felt like an accusation. After a brief grace, everyone began passing dishes. I noticed Tyler hesitating, looking at me for permission before taking a blueberry muffin. Tyler, honey, take whatever you'd like, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That's what brunch is for. He reached for the platter of bacon next, but Matthew pulled it away. Grandpa said we should serve ourselves first because we were on time. I saw Tyler's face fall, his hand retreating to his lap. Matthew, I said, keeping my voice light, I think there's plenty for everyone. Could you pass the bacon to Tyler, please? My father intervened. Rochelle, please don't undermine how I've instructed my grandchildren to behave. Punctuality is important. I met his gaze steadily. We were exactly on time, Dad. We've been here since 10:30 to help set up, Amanda added. That's what family does. I bit back a retort about the caterers who had actually done the setup, based on the van I'd seen pulling away as we arrived. Instead, I placed several strips of bacon on my plate and passed them directly to Tyler. Here you go, sweetheart. The tension at the table was palpable, but I refused to let Tyler go hungry again. He accepted the plate with a small smile that broke my heart, gratitude for something that should have been freely given. So, my father said, changing the subject, how's the new position going? George mentioned you'd be working under Diane Morris now. I took a sip of orange juice, buying time. It's going well. I'm heading up the new nonprofit division. Nonprofit? Amanda scoffed. That can't pay much. Actually, it's a significant promotion with a corresponding raise. James looked up from his plate, suddenly interested. Westfield's moving into nonprofit marketing? Smart move with all the tax advantages. I turned to him. It's more about corporate social responsibility and authentic brand alignment. But yes, there are financial benefits too. Well, my father said, I'm glad my talk with George worked out so well for you. There it was, the claim of credit again. Before I could respond, Tyler spoke up. Mom got promoted because she's really good at her job, he said quietly. She stayed up late lots of nights working on her campaign ideas. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Tyler rarely spoke during these gatherings anymore. That's sweet, Tyler, Amanda said condescendingly. But in the business world, connections are everything. Your mom is lucky to have Dad's help. I didn't ask for or need Dad's help, I said firmly. My father's expression hardened. Really? Because that's not what George told me. I don't know what George told you, but Diane Morris personally called me about the position. She specifically cited my work on the Henderson campaign. Who's Diane Morris? James asked. The new chief marketing officer, I explained. She came from Markwell Agency in New York. My father waved dismissively. George is the executive vice president. He's the one who makes decisions. About some things, I conceded. But Diane has full authority over marketing department structure and personnel. The conversation shifted then, moving to Amanda and James's plans for renovating their vacation home in Aspen. Tyler ate silently beside me, and I noticed that neither Matthew nor Emma engaged with him. In fact, they seemed to be deliberately excluding him from their whispered conversations. After about 20 minutes, Tyler leaned over to me. Mom, may I be excused? I want to go read in the library. Of course, honey. I watched as he slipped away from the table, his food barely touched despite his initial hunger. As soon as he was out of earshot, I turned to Matthew and Emma. Is everything okay between you and Tyler? You used to play together whenever we visited. Matthew stared at his plate. Emma glanced nervously at her mother. Children, Amanda said sharply, go join Tyler in the library. After all 3 children left, Amanda turned to me. If you must know, we've had some conversations about appropriate boundaries. What does that mean? I asked, already feeling defensive. It means, my father interjected, that we've explained to the children that while Tyler is family, your situation is different. Matthew and Emma need to understand that their privileges come from their parents' hard work and good choices. I felt like I'd been slapped. So you're teaching them to exclude their cousin because his father died? Because I'm a single mother? Don't be dramatic, Amanda said. We're teaching them about consequences. James works 60-hour weeks to provide for his family. I manage our household and social obligations. We've earned our lifestyle. And John chose to be a public school teacher, my father added. A noble profession, but not one that provides security. The injustice of their judgment burned in my chest. John was an incredible father and husband who died suddenly at 33. That wasn't a consequence of his career choice. It was a tragedy. Of course it was, James said, his tone falsely sympathetic. But responsible adults plan for contingencies, life insurance, investments. We had life insurance, I said through gritted teeth. It covered the medical bills and funeral costs. Precisely our point, my father said. Inadequate planning. I stood up, unable to sit through more of this. I'm going to check on Tyler. As I walked toward the library, I heard Amanda call after me. This is exactly why we worry about him, Rochelle. You walk away from difficult conversations instead of facing reality. I found Tyler curled up in the window seat with a book, deliberately positioned as far from his cousins as possible. They were playing some game on their tablets, laughing together. Hey, buddy, I said softly. How's the book? It's good. He didn't look up. Can we go home soon? In a little bit. I just need to talk to Grandpa first. Tyler finally met my eyes. Mom, did you know that Grandpa and Aunt Amanda tell Matthew and Emma not to share their things with me? My heart sank. What do you mean? He glanced at his cousins to make sure they weren't listening. Last time we were here, I asked to play with Matthew's new gaming system, and Grandpa said I needed to learn that I can't always have what others have. And at Christmas, Aunt Amanda told Emma not to let me play with her new tablet because you couldn't afford to replace it if I broke it. I struggled to maintain my composure as rage and heartbreak battled within me. Why didn't you tell me this before? You always seemed sad after we visited them. I didn't want to make you more sad. His simple explanation nearly undid me. My sweet boy had been protecting me, bearing their cruelty silently. Tyler, listen to me, I said, taking his small hands in mine. You have done nothing wrong. Nothing. And from now on, I want you to tell me if anyone at all, makes you feel bad about what we have or don't have. Promise me? He nodded solemnly. I need to talk to Grandpa now, okay? Just stay here with your book. I walked back to the dining room with a strange calm John's deathbed words echoing in my mind. Don't let them break his spirit, or yours. I had allowed my family's treatment to hurt not just me, but also my son. That ended today. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had shifted to Jessica's private school achievements and Emma's upcoming horse riding competition. The instructor says she has natural talent, Amanda was saying. He's trained Olympic medalists, so he would know. Speaking of schools, my father said as I sat down, have you considered what I said about Westridge Academy for Tyler? Now, with your promotion, maybe you could manage the tuition with some help from me. Before I could respond, Amanda added, public schools in this city are getting worse every year. All those budget cuts. Tyler's already behind Matthew in math and reading, isn't he? No, he isn't, I said firmly. Tyler is at the top of his class. His teacher suggested we look into the gifted program. Amanda raised an eyebrow skeptically. Well, their standards must be different. Different from what? I challenged. From Westridge, obviously. They're nationally ranked. I took a deep breath. Tyler is thriving at Lakeside Elementary. He loves his teachers, has good friends, and is excelling academically. But think of the opportunities at Westridge, my father pressed. The connections he'd make. His classmates would be the children of this city's elite. I thought of Tyler's current friends. Diverse in background, kind, accepting. I thought of his current teacher, Mrs. Callahan, who had gone above and beyond to help him process his grief after John died, creating a special journal project that had given him an outlet for his feelings. Dad, I appreciate the thought, but Tyler is where he needs to be. This is exactly why he'll stay limited, Amanda muttered to James, not quite quietly enough. Something snapped inside me. Limited? My son is compassionate, intelligent, creative, and resilient. He lost his father at 8 years old and has handled it with more grace than most adults could manage. There is nothing limited about him. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. No one's attacking Tyler, my father said in the tone he always used when he felt challenged. Reasonable on the surface, condescending underneath. We're trying to help you provide better opportunities for him. No, you're trying to mold him into your vision of success, just like you did with me. Just like you're doing with Jessica, Matthew, and Emma. Amanda's face reddened. Our children are successful because we set high standards. You and John always took the easy route. The easy route? I laughed incredulously. John worked 50-hour weeks teaching kids that everyone else had given up on, then tutored on weekends to save for our house down payment. I juggled full-time work with freelance projects to build my portfolio. What exactly was easy about that? You know what she means, my father interjected. You chose career satisfaction over financial security. We chose purpose and meaning, I corrected him. And we were happy. And now? Amanda challenged. Are you happy now? Struggling to make ends meet? Is Tyler happy wearing last season's clothes and being the only kid in his class who can't afford the latest gaming system? I was about to defend our life again when I noticed a small figure in the doorway. Tyler stood there, his book clutched to his chest, his face pale. I didn't know you couldn't afford stuff because of me, he said, his voice small and wounded. Tyler, no, I said, getting up immediately and going to him. That's not true at all. But Aunt Amanda said, your aunt is wrong, I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. We have everything we need and much of what we want. We're not struggling. We're living within our means and saving for important things, like your college fund. But at the restaurant, and now here, his voice trailed off, confused and hurt. I knelt down to his eye level, aware of my family watching but caring only about the pain in my son's eyes. What happened at the restaurant and what you just heard have nothing to do with our finances or what we can afford. They have to do with different values. Your dad and I believed that kindness, generosity, and doing meaningful work were the most important things in life. Some people, I glanced back at the table, value different things. Like money? Tyler asked, echoing our conversation from the other night. Yes, like money and status and appearances. But I want you to know something important. I took his hands in mine. Your father would be so proud of the person you're becoming. I know I am. And I wouldn't change our life together for anything. Amanda cleared her throat loudly. This is exactly the problem, Rochelle. You're teaching him to resent success instead of aspire to it. I stood up, keeping Tyler close to me. No, I'm teaching him that success has many definitions, and that character matters more than cash. Pretty words, my father said dismissively. But they don't pay bills or create opportunities. I was about to respond when the doorbell rang. James went to answer it, returning moments later with a surprised expression. Rochelle, there's someone here for you. Says her name is Diane Morris? I froze in confusion. I hadn't told Diane about today's brunch. Invite her in, I said, equally surprised. Diane entered the dining room with confident strides, professionally dressed even on a Sunday. I'm so sorry to interrupt your family gathering, Rochelle. You left your portfolio at our meeting yesterday, and I noticed it contained the proposal for tomorrow's presentation. I was in the neighborhood and thought you might need it. She handed me a leather portfolio I immediately recognized as mine. Thank you, I said, genuinely grateful. I would have been up all night recreating these notes. Diane Morris, my father said, rising to his feet and extending his hand. Harold Preston, I believe you know my friend George Westinghouse at your company. Diane shook his hand politely. Yes, George mentioned you're a valued business connection. It's nice to put a face to the name. I was just telling Rochelle how pleased I am that my recommendation helped with her promotion. I held my breath, waiting for Diane to either confirm or contradict my father's claim. Diane's expression remained pleasant but professional. Actually, Mr. Preston, Rochelle earned her promotion entirely on merit. Her work on the Henderson campaign was exceptional, increased engagement by 40%, and brought in 3 new major clients. That's why I've selected her to head our new nonprofit division. The air in the room seemed to still. My father's confidence faltered visibly. I'm sure George mentioned my interest in her work, he attempted. George and I discussed many talented team members, Diane said diplomatically. But the final decisions were based solely on performance metrics and demonstrated skills. She turned to me. Which reminds me, Rochelle, are you and Tyler still able to join my family for dinner next Saturday? My son Jackson hasn't stopped talking about the Science Museum since you mentioned it. This was news to me, but I quickly caught on. We're looking forward to it. Tyler looked up at me, confused but staying quiet. Amanda, never one to miss a networking opportunity, quickly inserted herself into the conversation. I don't believe we've met. I'm Amanda Woodward, Rochelle's sister. My husband James is in investment banking. Perhaps you've crossed paths? I don't believe so, Diane said pleasantly. Then, turning back to me, I should let you get back to your family time. I'll see you in the office tomorrow. She squeezed my arm gently, a gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by my observant family. After she left, a heavy silence filled the room. Well, my father finally said, it seems your new boss has taken quite an interest in you. Yes, I replied simply, not offering further explanation. Amanda studied me with new calculation in her eyes. Diane Morris. Isn't she the one who was featured in Business Weekly last month? The marketing wonderkind, who turned around 3 failing brands? That's her, I confirmed. For the first time that day, I saw something like respect flicker across Amanda's face. Not for me, but for my association with someone she deemed important. You should have mentioned you were working directly with her, my father said, his tone suggesting I had deliberately withheld valuable information. I kept my voice level. I did mention it. You were more interested in giving George credit for my promotion. Tyler tugged at my hand. Mom, can we go now? I have homework to finish. I nodded, grateful for his intuitive timing. Yes, we should get going. Thank you for brunch, Dad. As we gathered our things, I noticed Jessica watching me with an unreadable expression. Unlike her brothers, who took after James with their athletic builds and easy confidence, Jessica had always been more thoughtful and observant. Something in her eyes reminded me of myself at that age, before I'd learned to quiet my questions about our family's values. Tyler, Jessica said suddenly, wait a second. She disappeared up the stairs and returned moments later with a book. You might like this. It's about a kid who discovers he has secret powers but has to keep them hidden. Tyler accepted the book with surprised pleasure. Thanks, Jessica. Amanda frowned. Jessica, isn't that the limited edition you got for your birthday? I finished it already, Jessica said with a shrug. Tyler can borrow it. I caught Jessica's eye and mouthed a silent thank you. She gave me the barest nod in return. As we walked to our car, I felt Tyler's small hand slip into mine. Mom, was that lady really your boss? Did she really want us to come to dinner with her family? I smiled down at him. She is really my boss. And while she didn't actually invite us before, I think she would now if I asked. Would you like that? He nodded slowly. She seemed nice. Not fake nice, like Aunt Amanda. Tyler! Despite everything, I was startled by his bluntness. Well, it's true, he said defensively. Dad always said we should tell the truth. I couldn't argue with that. John had valued honesty above almost everything else. As we drove away from my father's house, I watched Tyler in the rearview mirror, already opening Jessica's book. A thought occurred to me. Perhaps the cracks in my family's perfect facade were becoming visible even to the next generation. Tyler, I said carefully, do you like spending time with Grandpa and Aunt Amanda's family? He considered this seriously before answering. I like their house and their stuff, but I don't feel good when we're there. Like I'm doing something wrong just by being me. His simple articulation of what I'd felt my entire life hit me with the force of revelation. I'd been allowing my son to be damaged by the same toxic dynamics that had shaped my own insecurities, all in the name of family. John's words came back to me again, Don't let them break his spirit, or yours. It was time to make changes, not just for Tyler's sake, but for my own. As we turned onto our street, I made a silent promise to both John and Tyler that things would be different from now on. Monday morning arrived with a newfound clarity. As I prepared for my meeting with Diane, I thought about how her unexpected appearance yesterday had shifted something fundamental in my family dynamic. For perhaps the first time, my father and Amanda had seen me through someone else's eyes, someone they respected. "Tyler, breakfast is ready," I called, placing a bowl of his favorite cereal on the table alongside fresh berries. He emerged from his room, already dressed for school, Jessica's borrowed book tucked under his arm. "Mom, this book is awesome." Jessica was right. It's about this kid who seems normal but actually has these powers he's just discovering. "That was nice of her to lend it to you," I said, pouring myself a cup of coffee. "Yeah." He hesitated. "Do you think she's different from Aunt Amanda? She doesn't seem mean like Matthew and Emma sometimes are." I considered this carefully. I think Jessica is at an age where she's figuring out who she wants to be, and maybe she's noticing things about her family that she doesn't agree with. Tyler nodded thoughtfully, digging into his cereal. "Kind of like you and Grandpa?" The insight took me aback. "What do you mean?" "Well, you don't act like Grandpa or Aunt Amanda. Dad used to say you were the rebel who chose happiness over stuff." I didn't really get what he meant before. I smiled, my heart aching with love for John and the wisdom he'd shared with our son. "Your dad was pretty smart, huh?" "The smartest," Tyler agreed. He also said Grandpa and Aunt Amanda weren't bad people, just scared people. This was news to me. Scared? What did he mean by that? Tyler shrugged. "He said they were scared of not having enough, or not being enough, so they needed lots of stuff, and to make other people feel small." I blinked back sudden tears. John had understood my family dynamics better than I had, and he'd found a way to explain it to Tyler without breeding resentment. "Your dad was right," I said softly. "And it's important to remember that even when people don't treat us well, it often says more about their fears than about us." Tyler finished his cereal and grabbed his backpack. "I know, Mom. That's why I don't get mad at Matthew and Emma. They're just copying their parents." As we drove to school, I marveled at my son's emotional intelligence. While I'd been trying to protect him from my family's judgment, he'd been developing his own understanding of the situation. One that, in many ways, was more mature than mine had been. After dropping Tyler off, I headed straight to Westfield Marketing for my 9 o'clock meeting with Diane. Her office was on the top floor, with glass walls offering a view of the city skyline. When I arrived, she was already on a call but waved me in. "Just wrapping up," she mouthed, pointing to the chair across from her desk. As I waited, I noticed a framed photo on her desk. Diane with a boy around Tyler's age, both dressed in hiking gear on what appeared to be a mountain trail. There were no other family members in the picture. "Sorry about that," she said, hanging up. "Budget discussions always take longer than scheduled." "No problem. And thank you again for dropping off my portfolio yesterday. That was above and beyond." Diane smiled. "It gave me the perfect excuse to check on you after what I witnessed at the Silver Oak." "I hope I didn't overstep." "Not at all. In fact, your timing couldn't have been better." I hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My family situation is complicated." "Family usually is," she said with understanding. I recognized some familiar dynamics at that restaurant. The power plays, the exclusion. She glanced at the photo I'd been looking at. Jackson and I had our share of awkward family dinners after his father left. Some relatives seem to think single motherhood is contagious. I laughed despite myself. That's exactly it. They treat my circumstances like they're the result of poor choices rather than life's unpredictability. "Well, their loss is our gain," Diane said briskly, shifting to professional mode. "I meant what I told your father. Your work is exceptional. The nonprofit division has been my pet project since joining Westfield, and I need someone who understands authentic messaging." "I'm honored, but also a little intimidated," I admitted. "Nonprofit marketing has different metrics and challenges, which is precisely why you're perfect for it. You understand that success isn't just about conversion rates and revenue, it's about impact and alignment with values." As the meeting continued, we outlined the division's structure and initial client targets. By the time we finished, it was nearly noon. "Let's grab lunch," Diane suggested. "I want to hear more about your ideas for the Webster Foundation campaign." We settled into a corner table at the cafe across the street, and conversation flowed easily between professional topics and more personal ones. I learned that Diane had been widowed young like me, though under different circumstances. Her husband had left when Jackson was 4, moving overseas and largely disappearing from their lives. "It was devastating at the time," she said, "but eventually I realized it had freed me to build a life aligned with my own values, not someone else's expectations." "That resonates," I admitted. "John and I were happy, but my family never approved of our choices. In their eyes, his death just confirmed they were right all along." "The old 'I told you so' approach to tragedy," Diane said dryly. "Some people can't resist. The hardest part is watching it affect Tyler. I thought I was shielding him from it, but it turns out he's been protecting me instead." Diane nodded thoughtfully. "Children absorb everything. Jackson became my little defender too, trying to be the man of the house at 6 years old." She took a sip of her iced tea. "That's why I intervened at the restaurant. Watching your son being excluded from the meal while the adults ate, it triggered memories. I should have done something more forceful," I said, shame washing over me. "I shouldn't have let him sit there with just bread. You were caught off guard in a public setting. Trust me, I've been there, frozen in disbelief that family could be so deliberately cruel." She leaned forward. "But it's what you do next that matters." "I'm still figuring that out," I admitted. "Well, for what it's worth, I'd like to extend a genuine dinner invitation to you and Tyler. Jackson doesn't have many friends who understand what it's like to lose a parent. Saturday at 6? Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill if the weather holds." "We'd love that," I said, touched by the gesture. As we walked back to the office, Diane said casually, "By the way, the Webster Foundation presentation tomorrow has been moved to the main conference room." The CEO decided to attend. I nearly stumbled. "Stephen Webster himself is coming?" He was impressed by the preliminary concepts I shared with him. This could be a significant account, Rochelle. The opportunity was enormous. The Webster Foundation controlled millions in charitable giving. Landing them as our first client would establish the nonprofit division immediately. "I'll be ready," I promised. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. I barely noticed the time until my phone buzzed with a text from my father. "Amanda tells me you haven't responded about this Sunday's gathering. Your absence would disappoint your sister's children." 11 a.m. as usual. No mention of yesterday's tension. No acknowledgement of how Tyler had been treated. Just the expectation of compliance with family obligations. Before I could respond, another text came through. "Also, I've arranged a lunch with George next week to discuss your new position. Tuesday at the club." The presumption struck me anew. My father was still attempting to insert himself into my professional life, to claim influence he didn't have. I was composing a response when my phone rang. "Amanda." With a deep breath, I answered. "Hello?" "Finally," she said, as though I'd been avoiding her calls. "I need you to take the kids this Saturday. James and I have a charity gala, and our regular sitter canceled. No greeting, no pleasantries, just an assumption that I would be available." "I can't this Saturday. I have plans." There was a pause. "What plans?" "You never have plans." The casual dismissal of my life stung, but I kept my voice even. "Tyler and I are having dinner with Diane Morris and her son." "Your boss?" Amanda's tone shifted immediately. "That's interesting. Is this a regular thing?" "It could be. Our boys are similar ages." "Well, you could bring the kids with you. I'm sure Diane wouldn't mind. Networking opportunities are precious, after all." I almost laughed at the transparency. Just yesterday, my son hadn't been worth feeding at a restaurant. Today, Amanda wanted to leverage his playdate for her children's advantage. "That won't work," I said firmly. "It's a small gathering, just the 4 of us." Rochelle, Amanda's voice took on the cajoling tone she used when trying to get her way. This is important. James's colleague bailed on hosting the gala, so we stepped in. It's for children's literacy, something you should appreciate given John's profession. The manipulation was so familiar I almost missed it. Almost. I'm sorry you're in a bind, but I've already committed to these plans. Maybe Jessica can watch her siblings? She's 14 now. Jessica? Amanda sounded genuinely shocked. She has college prep courses all weekend. Her future is a priority. I bit back a retort about Tyler's future apparently not meriting the same consideration. Then I suggest finding another sitter. I'm not available. This is ridiculous, Amanda snapped. After everything we do for you and Tyler, what exactly do you do for us, Amanda? I interrupted, surprising even myself. You exclude my son from family meals. You compare him unfavorably to your children. You instruct your kids not to share with him. Please tell me what I'm missing here. Silence stretched between us. Tyler has been exaggerating, she finally said. Children often misinterpret adult conversations. No, I don't think he has. My voice remained steady. In fact, I think he's been downplaying things to protect my feelings. This is absurd. We're family. Yes, we are. But being family doesn't give you the right to treat us as less than. I could practically hear her recalibrating, searching for another angle. Look, I understand you're still grieving John. It's been difficult for you. Managing alone. Sometimes that can make people oversensitive. I have to go, I cut in. I have a major presentation to prepare for tomorrow. I hope you find childcare for Saturday. After hanging up, I sat at my desk, heart pounding but mind clear. For years, I'd accepted their treatment, making excuses and trying to maintain family peace for Tyler's sake. But I was beginning to see that true peace wouldn't come from submission to their terms. It would come from establishing boundaries that protected both Tyler's dignity and my own. My phone buzzed again with a text from my father. Amanda says you're being difficult about Saturday. Family should come first, Rochelle. I typed back. I agree. That's why I'm prioritizing my son's well-being by keeping commitments that matter to him. Then I turned my attention back to the Webster Foundation presentation. Tomorrow would be a new beginning, professionally and personally. The Webster Foundation presentation was scheduled for 2 o'clock Tuesday afternoon. I arrived at the office early, reviewing my notes and making final adjustments to the slides. When Diane stopped by my desk at noon, I was deep in concentration. Working through lunch? She asked, setting down a sandwich wrapped in paper. Just making sure everything's perfect. I glanced up gratefully at the food. Thank you for this. Can't have you fainting from hunger in front of Stephen Webster. She pulled up a chair. How are you feeling about the presentation? Prepared? I said honestly. This approach feels right. Focusing on authentic impact storytelling rather than traditional metrics. Diane nodded approvingly. That's exactly why I wanted you for this division. You understand that nonprofit marketing isn't just about donor acquisition, it's about creating genuine connection to the mission. As we discussed last-minute details, my phone lit up with a text. Amanda again. Emergency. Need to speak immediately. I hesitated, glancing at the time. Everything okay? Diane asked, noticing my expression. Just family, I said, putting the phone face down. It can wait until after the presentation. Diane's eyes held understanding. Family emergencies have a way of occurring at professionally pivotal moments. I've noticed that pattern myself. You too? She smiled wryly. Oh yes. My mother-in-law mysteriously needed immediate assistance every time I had an important interview or presentation. After the third emergency, that resolved itself when I couldn't drop everything, I started recognizing the pattern. My phone buzzed again persistently, then again. I should at least check, I said apologetically, turning it over. 3 texts from Amanda. Emergency. Call now. Dad collapsed. At hospital. Methodist Medical Center. ER. My stomach dropped. My dad's in the hospital, I said, standing quickly. I have to go. Of course, Diane said immediately. Do you want me to drive you? You seem shaken. No, I tried to think clearly. The presentation. It's so important. Family comes first, Diane said firmly. I can handle Webster this afternoon. You've prepared everything beautifully. I'll just deliver it. Are you sure? Absolutely. Go. Call me when you know more. I grabbed my purse and rushed out, mind racing. Despite our complicated relationship, the thought of my father seriously ill sent fear coursing through me. The drive to Methodist Medical Center took 20 minutes in midday traffic. I parked haphazardly in the emergency lot and ran inside, giving my father's name at the desk. Preston? Let me check, the receptionist said, typing into her computer. She frowned slightly. I'm not seeing anyone by that name admitted today. That's impossible. My sister texted that he collapsed and was brought here. When did he arrive? Within the last hour, I think. She checked again. I'm sorry, but there's no Harold Preston in our system. Could he be at a different hospital or under a different name for some reason? Confusion and the first stirrings of suspicion rose within me. I stepped away from the desk and called Amanda. Finally, she answered on the first ring. Where are you? At Methodist ER. They have no record of Dad being admitted. There was a slight pause. They must have made a mistake. We're in the third-floor waiting area. The third floor? That's not emergency services. They moved him for tests. Just come up. Something wasn't adding up, but concern for my father overrode my suspicions. I took the elevator to the third floor and found Amanda sitting alone in a small waiting area, scrolling through her phone. Where's Dad? I asked immediately. She looked up. They're doing some tests, CT scan or something. What happened? You said he collapsed. He was dizzy and fell at lunch. The restaurant called an ambulance. And, I glanced around, where's James? Or the kids? James is in court today. The kids are at school, obviously. None of this explained the urgency of her texts or why the ER had no record of my father. Which doctor is seeing him? I want to talk to them. Amanda's expression shifted subtly. Listen, before they come back, we need to discuss Saturday. My suspicion crystallized into certainty. There's nothing wrong with Dad, is there? She had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. He did have a dizzy spell at lunch. The doctor said it was just low blood sugar, but they're doing some routine tests while he's here. So he didn't collapse? He didn't come by ambulance? I may have dramatized a bit to ensure you'd come quickly. Anger flared hot and bright. You claimed there was a medical emergency to get me here to discuss babysitting? It's not just babysitting, she insisted. It's the Westridge Academy Foundation Gala. James is being considered for their board. If we back out of hosting now, it would be disastrous for his prospects. I stared at her, truly seeing the depth of her self-absorption for perhaps the first time. I was in the middle of preparing for the most important presentation of my career. Amanda waved dismissively. You can reschedule a meeting. This is family. Where is Dad right now, actually? She shifted uncomfortably, having coffee in the cafeteria. The doctor already cleared him to leave. Without another word, I turned to go. Rochelle, wait, Amanda called, following me to the elevator. You're being completely unreasonable. I wouldn't have had to resort to this if you'd just agreed to help with the kids, like family should. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside. I have to get back to work. So that's it? Your career matters more than your family? She held the doors open. What would John think of you putting work before family? The mention of John's name stopped me cold. Don't you dare use my husband's memory to manipulate me. I'm not manipulating you, I'm reminding you of values. John was all about family. Yes, he was. He valued genuine family connections built on love and respect, not transactions and power plays. I took a deep breath. Amanda, this isn't about Saturday anymore. This is about a pattern that's existed our entire lives, and I'm done with it. What are you talking about? You lied about a medical emergency to pull me away from an important professional opportunity. Do you understand how disturbed that is? She rolled her eyes. Don't be so dramatic. I needed to talk to you. And you were ignoring my messages. Because I was working on a major presentation that could define my career path. A career you only have because of Dad's connections, she shot back. I held her gaze steadily. We both know that's not true anymore. Your reaction when Diane contradicted that claim made it clear you believe her, not Dad's version. Her expression confirmed my words. The elevator doors tried to close again, and she stepped back, allowing them to do so this time. As I drove back to the office, my phone rang, my father calling. I answered on Bluetooth. Rochelle, Amanda says you stormed out of the hospital. What's going on? Dad, are you aware that Amanda told me you collapsed and were brought to the ER by ambulance? A pause. That's a bit extreme. I had a dizzy spell at lunch. The restaurant manager insisted I get checked out, so Amanda drove me to the hospital. Doctor says I'm fine, just need to remember to eat regularly. So you know she lied to get me to the hospital? Another pause. She's concerned about the gala this weekend. It's important to James's career. And my career isn't important? Of course it is, but family obligations? No, I interrupted firmly. My obligation is to my son first and to commitments I've already made. Amanda's childcare problems are not my emergency. Rochelle, his tone sharpened with warning, I don't like this attitude. Ever since you started working with this Diane person, you've become defiant. I've become clear, I corrected, about my priorities and boundaries. We're trying to help you, he insisted. Everything we do, the advice, the connections, the concern about Tyler's education, it's all because we want what's best for you. No, Dad. You want what you think is best for me, based on your values and priorities. You've never respected mine. This is about John, isn't it? You're still bitter that we didn't approve of your marriage. This is about a lifetime of conditional love and support. It's about teaching Amanda's children to exclude Tyler. It's about using a fake medical emergency to manipulate me. No one is manipulating. I have to go, Dad. I'm driving back to an important meeting that I hope I haven't missed entirely because of Amanda's lies. I ended the call before he could respond. When I arrived back at the office, it was 2:30, halfway through the scheduled presentation time. I rushed to the conference room, straightening my clothes and trying to calm my racing heart. Through the glass walls, I could see Diane standing at the front of the room, gesturing to a slide showing impact metrics from a previous campaign. Stephen Webster, recognizable from his photos in business publications, sat at the head of the table, nodding thoughtfully. I slipped into the room as quietly as possible, taking an empty seat at the back. Diane's eyes met mine briefly, a question in them that I answered with a small nod. For the next 30 minutes, I watched as she skillfully presented the strategy I'd developed, giving me full credit repeatedly. When she concluded, Stephen Webster asked several incisive questions that I was able to answer confidently, having thoroughly researched his foundation's work. I like your approach, Miss Williams, he said finally. It's refreshing to see marketing that focuses on the human impact rather than just donor acquisition metrics. Thank you, Mr. Webster, I replied. We believe authentic storytelling drives more meaningful engagement than traditional techniques. As the meeting concluded and people filed out, Diane approached me. Everything okay with your father? It was a false alarm, I said, not wanting to get into the full story at the office. Thank you for covering for me. You did an amazing job with the presentation. I just delivered your work, she said generously. And Webster was impressed. He's ready to move forward. Relief and satisfaction washed through me. That's wonderful news. We'll celebrate properly soon, she promised. Still on for Saturday dinner? Absolutely, I confirmed, more determined than ever to keep that commitment. As I returned to my desk, my phone lit up with a text from Jessica, which surprised me. Mom told me to ask you again about Saturday, but I wanted to say it's okay if you can't. Sorry about today. The apology caught me off guard. It seemed Jessica was more aware of her mother's machinations than I'd realized. I replied carefully, Thank you for understanding, Jessica. I already have plans Saturday, but I'd love to get together with you soon. Tyler is enjoying your book. Her response came quickly. Maybe I could come see Tyler's school sometime? If that's okay. The request was unexpected but touching. I think he'd like that. Let's talk about it next time I see you. As I drove to pick up Tyler from his after-school program, I realized something had fundamentally changed today. The frantic dash to the hospital based on Amanda's lie had clarified what I'd been feeling since the restaurant incident. I needed to reset the terms of my relationship with my family, not just for my sake, but for Tyler's. John's voice seemed to whisper in my mind. Stand firm in your truth, Rach. You've always been stronger than you know. By the time I pulled into the school parking lot, I'd made my decision. It was time to break the cycle, once and for all. Saturday evening arrived with a sense of anticipation. Tyler had spent the morning helping me prepare a homemade apple pie to bring to Diane's house, his face serious with concentration as he carefully arranged the lattice top. Do you think Jackson will like me? He asked as we drove through Diane's neighborhood. Modest homes with well-kept yards, similar to our own area. I think you two will get along great, I assured him. His mom says he loves science and reading, just like you. Tyler nodded, clutching the book Jessica had lent him. I finished this. It was really good. Do you think Jackson might like it too? That's thoughtful of you to share. Why don't you ask him? When we arrived, Diane welcomed us warmly, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, a marked contrast to her polished office appearance. Her son, Jackson, a lanky boy with his mother's observant eyes, initially hung back shyly. Jackson, this is Tyler, Diane introduced them. Tyler, Jackson has been setting up the backyard for us. Would you like to see? Tyler looked to me for reassurance before nodding and following Jackson through the house. Through the sliding glass doors, I could see a simple but inviting setup. A grill ready for cooking, a patio table with 4-place settings, and a fire pit, surrounded by comfortable chairs. Nothing fancy, Diane said, accepting the pie with appreciation, but we love eating outside when the weather cooperates. It's perfect, I said sincerely. Thank you for inviting us. While Diane prepared the burgers, I watched Tyler and Jackson through the kitchen window. Their initial awkwardness had already given way to animated conversation, with Tyler showing Jackson the book and Jackson eagerly flipping through the pages. They're hitting it off, Diane noted with satisfaction. Jackson was nervous. He doesn't have many close friends since we moved here last year. Tyler, too, I admitted. He's friendly with kids at school, but since John died, he's been more reserved. It's like he's afraid to get too attached. Diane nodded, understanding. Loss changes them. Jackson was the same after his father left. It takes time to rebuild that sense of security. As we carried the food outside, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, having already received multiple calls and messages from both my father and Amanda throughout the day. The evening unfolded with an ease I hadn't experienced in family gatherings for years. Conversation flowed naturally, the food was simple but delicious, and most importantly, Tyler was relaxed and animated, matching Jackson's enthusiasm for their shared interests. After dinner, the boys toasted marshmallows over the fire pit while Diane and I talked about everything from work to parenting to our own childhoods. When I mentioned the ongoing situation with my family, including Amanda's hospital deception, Diane listened without judgment. Family patterns are powerful, she said, watching the flames dance in the fire pit. Breaking them requires tremendous courage. I'm still figuring out what that looks like, I admitted. Complete separation feels extreme, but continuing as we have been isn't an option either. It's rarely all or nothing, Diane suggested. I found that clear boundaries, consistently enforced, eventually reshaped my relationship with my former in-laws. It wasn't easy, and there were painful adjustments, but ultimately it created a healthier connection, especially for Jackson. By the time we said our goodbyes, with promises of future get-togethers, it was nearly 10 o'clock. Tyler fell asleep in the car on the way home, content exhaustion on his face. After carrying him to bed, I finally checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Amanda, 2 from my father, and numerous texts escalating in urgency about the gala. The final message from Amanda read, "Dad is furious. Don't bother coming to Sunday brunch. You've made your choice clear." Rather than feeling hurt, I felt strangely liberated. For once, I'd prioritized what was good and healthy for Tyler and me, rather than capitulating to family pressure. The next morning, I made pancakes shaped like dinosaurs, Tyler's favorite, and we enjoyed a leisurely breakfast, something Sunday brunch at my father's house never allowed. "No grandpas today?" Tyler asked, pouring more syrup than strictly necessary. "Not today. I thought we might do something different, just the 2 of us. Any ideas?" He considered this seriously. Could we go to the science museum? The one with the space exhibit you promised we'd see? That sounds perfect. As we explored the museum later that morning, Tyler's excitement over the interactive displays and my own enjoyment of his wonder made me realize how rarely we did things purely for our own pleasure. Too often, our free time had been structured around family obligations that left us both drained rather than energized. We were examining a model of the Mars rover when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find Jessica standing with a friend, both holding museum maps. "Aunt Rochelle," she said, seeming genuinely pleased to see us. "Tyler, are you here for the space exhibit too?" Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "We just saw the moon landing display. It was awesome." "That's where we're heading," Jessica said. She introduced her friend Zoe, then added hesitantly, "Mom thinks I'm at SAT prep with Zoe. She doesn't know we came here after." The admission surprised me. "Your secret's safe with us," I assured her, "though I don't think your mom would mind you visiting a museum." Jessica rolled her eyes in typical teenage fashion. She would if she knew I skipped the extra calculus session to come. But I've been studying all weekend for the gala, and I just needed a break. "How did the gala go?" I asked carefully. "It was fine. Boring, mostly." Mom found a college student to watch Matt and Emma. She glanced at her phone. "We should go if we want to see everything before I need to be home. But maybe," she hesitated. "Maybe I could come over sometime? To talk about colleges? Mom only wants me applying to her alma mater, but I'm interested in other options." "I'd like that," I said, touched by her trust. "You're welcome anytime." After she left, Tyler looked at me questioningly. "Is Jessica in trouble with Aunt Amanda?" "Not exactly. She's just finding her own path, which can be difficult in our family." "Like you did with Dad?" "Yes, like that." I squeezed his shoulder gently. Sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that lead to the greatest happiness. The following week brought a series of increasingly conciliatory messages from my father, culminating in an invitation to meet for coffee. Just the two of us. I agreed, setting a time at a cafe near my office rather than his club as he'd suggested. He arrived precisely on time, looking slightly uncomfortable in the casual setting. After ordering, he got straight to the point, his typical approach. "Rochelle, this situation has gone on long enough. Your absence at Sunday brunch upset the children." "By the children, do you mean Amanda?" I asked mildly. He frowned. "Matthew and Emma asked where you and Tyler were." "Did they?" "That's interesting, considering they've been instructed not to share with him or include him in activities." My father shifted uncomfortably. "I think Tyler may have misinterpreted some things." "No, Dad. I've witnessed it myself. And more importantly, I've allowed it to continue by not addressing it directly." I took a sip of my coffee. "That's on me, and I'm changing it now." "By cutting us off? That's rather extreme, don't you think?" "I'm not cutting anyone off. I'm establishing boundaries about how Tyler and I deserve to be treated." I met his gaze steadily. No more excluding him from meals. No more comparing him unfavorably to his cousins. No more undermining my parenting or career choices. He was silent for a moment. "You've changed. I've clarified my priorities. Tyler's well-being comes first. Always." "And what about family loyalty? Doesn't that matter anymore?" "Loyalty goes both ways, Dad. When have you or Amanda shown loyalty to my choices or values?" He didn't answer directly, instead shifting to another angle. "The Webster Foundation account, that's quite an achievement." "Yes, it is," I agreed, not adding that it had happened despite, not because of, his influence. "I was thinking," he continued carefully, "perhaps we could discuss a college fund for Tyler. A properly managed trust could give him options beyond what you might be able to provide alone." I recognized the offering for what it was, an attempt to reassert control through financial means. In the past, I might have accepted gratefully, seeing only the practical benefit for Tyler rather than the strings attached. "That's generous," I said, "but Tyler and I are doing fine. I've been contributing to a 529 plan since he was born. But with proper investment strategy—" "Dad," I interrupted gently, "I appreciate the thought, but financial assistance isn't what we need from you." "What do you need then?" he asked, seeming genuinely perplexed. Respect, acceptance, love without conditions. I smiled slightly at his confused expression. I know that sounds abstract to you, but it's actually very simple. Treat Tyler like he's as valuable as Amanda's children. Acknowledge that my life choices, while different from yours, are valid. Support my parenting instead of undermining it. He was quiet for a long time. I don't know how to do that, he finally admitted. I've always believed I was helping by pushing you toward greater achievement, better opportunities. I know you have, I said, realizing perhaps for the first time that his controlling behavior had, in his mind, been an expression of care. But you've been measuring success by standards that aren't mine. And what are your standards? He asked, not unkindly. Meaningful work, genuine relationships, teaching Tyler to value character over status, creating a home where he feels secure and accepted for exactly who he is. My father nodded slowly. John's influence. Partly, I acknowledged, but also my own values, which were always there, even when I was trying to please you by suppressing them. As our conversation continued, I saw something shift in my father's demeanor. Not a complete transformation, but a willingness to listen that hadn't been there before. When we parted, he surprised me with an awkward hug. I'd like to try, he said simply. 3 months later, I stood in my kitchen, putting final touches on Tyler's birthday cake. At 10 years old, almost 11 now, he'd requested a planetary design, his interest in space having blossomed since our museum visit. The doorbell rang and Tyler raced to answer it. They're here. They were our guests, a small but meaningful gathering. Diane and Jackson arrived first, carrying a gift wrapped in space-themed paper. Next came Jessica, who had been visiting regularly, ostensibly for college advice, but clearly also enjoying the freedom to be herself away from Amanda's critical eye. And finally, to my surprise, my father arrived alone. He'd called earlier in the week, asking permission to attend and inquiring what Tyler might want as a gift. I thought something practical, he'd said, but then I remembered you mentioned his interest in astronomy. The telescope he brought, not the most expensive model available, but one specifically chosen for a beginning enthusiast, showed a thoughtfulness I wouldn't have expected 3 months ago. As I watched Tyler excitedly showing his grandfather how the telescope worked, with Jackson and Jessica joining in, I felt a presence beside me. This is nice, Diane said quietly. Different faces than I would have expected at the beginning of our friendship. Life has a way of revealing who belongs in our inner circle, I replied. Sometimes it's not who we expected. Amanda had declined the invitation, citing a scheduling conflict, but sending a gift certificate with Jessica. While our relationship remained tense, small changes were happening there too. She'd stopped making comments about Tyler's clothes and school, a basic courtesy that felt like progress. After cake and presents, as everyone gathered in the backyard to try out the telescope, despite it being daylight, I found myself thinking of John. He would have loved this scene, our son surrounded by people who genuinely delighted in him, exactly as he was. My father approached, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. I've been meaning to tell you something, he said quietly. I've started seeing someone, a therapist. The admission clearly cost him considerable pride. That's unexpected, I managed. He nodded. Jessica suggested it, actually. She's quite insightful for her age. She is, I agreed, watching my niece laughing with Tyler across the yard. I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About conditional love. He cleared his throat uncomfortably. I don't want to lose you and Tyler the way I've seen Amanda losing Jessica. This old dog is trying to learn new tricks, as they say. The humility in his admission touched me deeply. I'm glad you're here, Dad. As the party continued, I observed the unlikely gathering with profound gratitude. The path to this moment had been painful. From that humiliating dinner where Amanda had handed Tyler only a bread basket, through confrontations and difficult boundaries, to this new configuration of relationships. The true wealth in life, I realized, wasn't measured in designer clothes or exclusive memberships or even professional achievements. It was found in authentic connections, in the courage to stand up for yourself and those you love, and in the freedom to define family on your own terms. That night, after everyone had gone and Tyler was asleep, I sat on our small balcony looking at the stars through John's old binoculars. "We're okay," I whispered as if he could hear me. "We're more than okay. We're finding our way." The cool night air carried no response, but in my heart I felt his presence, his gentle strength that had always believed in my own, even when I couldn't see it. Standing up for Tyler at that restaurant hadn't just been about a meal. It had been about breaking a generational pattern of conditional love and approval. It had been about showing my son that his worth wasn't determined by others' judgments. Most importantly, it had been about honoring the family we had built together, John, Tyler, and me, and the values we shared. Some people might look at my life and see what was missing, the luxuries Amanda had, the prestigious connections my father valued. But I saw what was present. A son growing in confidence and compassion. New friendships built on mutual respect, family relationships slowly transforming into healthier forms, and a career aligned with my authentic values. This, I knew with certainty, was true success. This was wealth that mattered. Have you ever had to stand up to family for yourself or your child? What helped you find the courage to break unhealthy patterns? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need this message today. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by others' limited vision of you.